Anyway, welcome. Welcome to the Oakes Ames Memorial Hall. We are very honored to be part of this 300th celebration. And also, we've got the chair and the co-chair, and they're in the back, and you can't miss them. They're dressed up. There's Dave Clifton is the chair, and Dale Carrister. So they're our poster boys. I also want to thank the Easton Lions and partnering with the Easton Historical Society for putting on what looks to be a very, and obviously very interesting evening I'm looking forward to. And Ken Michaels, is Ken here? I guess not. But anyway, he's the president of the Historical Society. Oh, he's speaking. He's probably getting nervous. But anyway, I'm also just going to put in a plug for the hall and the friends of the hall. We're working on getting an elevator, which I think is going to be music to a lot of your ears. And we're making progress on some grants, and I hope we'll have good news fairly soon. And it's moving. Finally, we've talked about it a lot, but now it is moving. So also, and I forgot my props, please join the Friends of the Oakes Ames Hall. We have a great newsletter that comes out, covers architecture, history. It's very interesting. It's done very well. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Rob Goodrich, our MC for the night. And, it's right there. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, Rob. 1 second. This is Joan Lundgren coming in. So, round of applause for Joan. Here we go. Okay. Oh, that's great. I'm sorry. Okay, well, you'll see on your way out, somebody will be accosting you with one of these. And so I turn it over to Rob Goodrich. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you, Joan. Really appreciate it. We found a teal blue phone. We do? Okay, yep. All right. We do care. We do. All right, so Fred kind of stole my thunder. I wanted to thank people, the Easton Historical Society, who we partnered with to make this event possible. The Ames Memorial Hall, Fred's giving us this hall gratis. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I'd also like to thank our friends at the Easton Community Access Television, or ECAT. Anytime there's something happening in town, they are always here. To the hardworking members of the Easton Tricentennial Committee, we salute you. And to all of our selfless Easton Lions volunteers who put countless hours in for community service, we salute you as well. Also to the sponsors of the Easton Lions, we have our sponsor list over there. And last but not least, we would like to thank you all for coming here tonight. It's a Saturday night, and we greatly appreciate you all coming here to spend some time with us and to nerd out on history. So there are going to be 4 presenters. 3 are actually Easton Lions. Ken Michael is the lone holdout, and we're still working on him. But at any rate, this is the event schedule. So Ed's going to lead us off. He's going to talk about Easton's early history, entrepreneurs, and innovators. He's going to be talking for the longest, 25 minutes. And then we're going to transition. We have some videos, wonderful archival footage that we never knew that there was film that existed during those time periods, but I think that'll be of great interest to you all. And then Ken Michael's going to talk about Easton's answer to the call of military service, followed by Bill Ames, who's going to discuss the advent of Shoveltown and the Ames family legacy. And then yours truly will follow them. I'll have the shortest presentation, only 10 minutes. But it's the Easton Lions history, or as much as I can tell you in 10 minutes. And then at the very end, it's a very special award, the Avery Lee Williams Community Service Award. It's given out every year. And associated with that award is a $5,000 donation to a charity of that person's choice. So it's a very special award. It's going to be given to a very special person whom I think most of you would recognize, or at least the name of the individual. So I would encourage you to stay until the very end. So without much ado, just sort of a protocol thing. I'm going to try and keep our speakers to the appropriate period of time. So if you feel them rushing near the end of their presentation, you know why. A yellow card connotes 5 minutes left. And then the infamous red card for you soccer players out there. Now, we're not going to toss you out of the hall. No, it means they have to wrap things up. They have 1 minute to go. I'm the timekeeper, the MC, and the floor sweeper and everything else. So without much ado, I'd like to bring in, one other thing. We, as a community, have an enduring gratitude for one of the first historians in Easton, William Ladd Chafin. If you've never read his book, it's a great read. It's also a great doorstop as well. It's 838 pages. History of Easton. It was published in 1886, but it's marvelously modern language, and it really is a page turner. And the great thing is he devoted 7 years of painstaking interviews, research, archival research, and so forth to put this together, and talking to people. And he captured so many stories. And so we are so fortunate of a community as small as this is to have had so much of our history collected so early on when the stories were fresh and before they were forgotten. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Ed Hands up here.
Where's my magic slide mover thingy? Thank you. Very good. Appreciate that. So welcome to the time. I was approached by my dear friend Rob. He's going to do the early history of Easton. So, Earth is 4 billion years old. And I thought that was a lot to cover in 20 minutes. So it came to me at the beginning of the week here, Ed, I'll give you another 5 minutes. And of course, you have to do entrepreneurship as well as whatever else I was planning to do. But we're going to get started. Obviously, in 25 minutes, you're not going to get all the details. I guess I'm the guy that can grump at Reverend Chaffin because he was a great historian as long as you didn't want to know about women, immigrants, or black people. So if you were a white male, you got 836 pages. And we'll get into that a little bit. It wasn't his fault. That was the way things were back then. Let me see if I can make this work. Yes. Yeah. There was some doubt about that earlier today. So we're gonna jump ahead about 3.9 billion years and go to 11,000 years ago when there was an ice age. Slightly different than the ice age we're having now. There was real ice back then. That's when we have the evidence of the very first human visits to Easton. And unfortunately, they didn't stay very long because they were chasing after these gigantic mammoths, mastodons, and other megafauna. But we do have one tiny piece of a spear point from that time period. About 2,000 years later, people began to live here on a permanent basis. And ultimately what happened is that we had I want an extra 30 seconds. Ultimately what happened is that we ended up with 2 Native American villages here. The oldest was out where Wheaton Farm is today, and that was tied into a very large Indian village that is down at the interchange of 495 and Bay Road. And then the more recent one is where the car wash is on 138. And that was almost still in business at the time of the first settlers coming here, because they chose that area because they didn't have to chop down so many trees. There was bushes and shrubs because the Native Americans had just left. So continuing the Native American thing, we were lucky to have a Native American superhighway run right through the middle of Easton, and that was Bay Road. And evidence indicates that that was actually traversed by people going to the Blue Hills to get stones for arrowheads and going down to the Taunton Fish Weir. That's what the weir means in Taunton. By the time the first settlers came here, Bay Road was worn 3 feet deep into the ground from just the moccasin of the people. On the other side over here, we have a couple of things. We have the names of all the Easton neighborhoods, including the 3 I added for my book back in 1993. The Howard, Haywood Pool, and Southeastern-ish, I guess Easton Center. I was living there at the time, so we made that a neighborhood as well. But traditionally there's 7 neighborhoods in Easton: Pequannock, Northeastern, Southeastern, Eastondale, Unionville, and Furnace Village. The red lines here are roads, and some of those roads were also Native American trails because they were the way that you could get from the village on the east side of Easton to the village on the west side of Easton. So there's plenty of evidence that there was Native American settlement here, and if you don't believe me, go to the Historical Society. They have a wonderful collection. Native Americans were famous for the Three Sisters planting system, and this is just a quick sketch to show you what a Native American garden would look like. And this was what we would have along the Queesit Brook down where the car wash is on Depot Street. I like the circular thing there because that would tell you what you could have had tonight if the Native Americans were running the show back 600 years ago, and that would be fish, shad, salmon, more fish, and whatever plants grew. And if you've shopped at Langwater recently, you know that ramps, which are wild onions, and fiddleheads, which are wild ferns, are the very first vegetables on the menu for both scroungy Yankees and Native Americans. So nobody wanted to live in Easton. Okay. Not even the freaks wanted to live in Easton. These are the freaks, believe it or not. John, Elizabeth, and Baby Freak. And the reason they're here is that's the very first painting that we know about that was ever done in Massachusetts. And it was done about the mid-1670s. And while the freaks were wealthy Boston merchant family, this would be the Sunday best for people that were beginning to move into Easton. It's very different than what you're seeing in the back of the hall, where those guys are doing the 18th century impression. This is 17th century, and Easton was a 17th century town. Now, the reason that people didn't want to live here is that we were actually, ironically enough, the borderline between the Wampanoags, the Massachusetts, and some people have suggested even the Nipmuc tribe, which was a little bit further into central Mass. So this was the hunting ground where nobody in the colonial period stayed for very long. Our villages were here for the summer, and then the Native Americans would move away. That line between the Wampanoags and Massachusetts ultimately was chosen as the colony line between Plymouth Colony and Massachusetts Bay Colony. That line was decided in 1639, which paved the way for Taunton to be settled. The folks that went to Taunton to settle with Elizabeth Pole probably came down the Bay Road from Boston and settled. But it would be a long time before anybody came over this far to the Taunton North Purchase. So this is the Taunton North Purchase. It was purchased from the Indians in 1668, shortly before the outbreak of King Philip's War. And I'm semi-proud to say that my ancestor, Constant Southworth, was the guy who brokered the deal. He was the real estate agent. He also is known as one of the great stealers of land from Native Americans. And I'm proud to say that Easton doesn't recognize very much about him, but if you go over to West Bridgewater to their historical society, they have a big marble plaque for him. So I'll sneak over there every once in a while. So what happened was that people were living down south in Taunton, and they moved slowly up into Norton, and then even into Mansfield. Mansfield just had their 250th anniversary parade today, so they became a town 50 years after Easton. But it turns out that the relative of our first settler had settled in the Mansfield area in the 1670s or 1680s, and that was Clement Briggs. Now the guys with stars next to their names are the 7 families of squatters. They all moved to Easton before the land was laid out by the Taunton North Purchase Company. If you go to Taunton today, the earliest records at the Taunton Registry of Deeds belong to the Taunton North Purchase Society. And you can still look at these documents from the later part of the 1600s. Kind of interesting. You may recognize some of the names. Briggs was the first person to come here because of his connection with his uncle. He spent much of his youth in this area. The Randalls, hey, we have a Randall Street, and there are still members of the Randall family living in town. Phillipses, I don't know if the Phillips family is still represented, but they were recently. Manleys, again, another family that lasts well into the 19th century. The Haywards are still here and still on the original land that they got, and we'll talk about that. Actually, that's not this Hayward. It's a scandal. No, it wasn't a scandal. This guy William Hayward came over from Braintree, and he's not related to the Bridgewater Haywoods who are still living here in town. But there you go. So this is where they lived. The red spot where it says gristmill. Watch this one, folks. I'm going to press a button, and there it is, right there. This high-tech stuff is great. So that's where the car wash is today, and the first site is supposed to be right here. And this is where Clement Briggs built his house. He finally got a deed to the property, so he's no longer a squatter. Unfortunately, he let the mice in his attic eat the deed, so that when he died, his children had to get a separate copy of the deed in order to be able to sell the property. Right around the corner, where the cemetery on Church Street is today, was the first church in town. And religion is incredibly important to people at this time. Now, one of the great gifts that Rob gave me was a time period when there aren't any real pictures. We have the freaks and we have gravestones, and the gravestones. Can I speak louder? Yes, I can. I can use my teacher voice. Sorry. I thought mumbling works, but all right. So this is the #1 form of art for people living in the 17th and 18th century. It was a way for them to express their religious beliefs. It was a way for them to show off their status. And Easton is one of the only towns in America where Mrs. Hannah Haywood has 2 gravestones. And the reason she has 2 gravestones, after a lot of historical research, no thanks to Reverend Chaffin on this one, we determined that what happened was her husband died 13 years after she did. And when he died, the kids put in a second gravestone. And the reason why? The sheep, which was the lawnmower of the 18th century, had knocked the first stone down and it was covered with grass, which was where it was discovered by some high school students about 30 years ago. The very first gravestone in Easton belonged to Elder William Pratt, and we hired somebody who didn't benefit from education too much, and he says, here lies, L-I-S-E, Elder William Pratt. Okay. Now, Elder William Pratt, an elder, for those of you who are not Congregationalists, I guess, an elder is a member of the church hierarchy who can, in the absence of a regular minister, perform the sacraments and things like that. So he was our first minister, and therefore, in theory, the wealthiest man in town. But when he died in 1713, he got this really unusual hand-carved gravestone by somebody who didn't usually do gravestones. Shortly thereafter, when his wife passed away, she got the really cool gravestone, the one down below. And that was shipped all the way down from Boston. It has a hourglass at the top. It has the eyebrows, and the guy that carved it is known as the Eyebrow Man, because he carved all his eyebrows to look exactly like that. So we don't have very many skulls like you would see if you went to Braintree, that still has some 17th century stones, but the ones we have are really good. I'll show you one more. And the one at the bottom, here lies ye body of Mr. John Daly. Daly is the Daly that they named Daly's Corner for. His house is at the top of Stonehouse Hill. The cellar hole is still there. And he was a very well-off man with a semi-suspicious reputation. They're getting better at spelling here lies. They also sent all the way to Boston to get this gravestone. And this is important because not only are gravestones artwork, but they're items of trade. And the one on the top is found all the way up in New Hampshire. So there was a trade route for this gravestone marker's maker that stretched all the way from New Hampshire all the way down here to Massachusetts. So things were beginning to get more civilized here in Easton. We weren't just a farm town with farmers barely making a living. We were beginning to be part of the international trade links of the British Empire. So I wanted to point this out. This is the other end of the Church Street Cemetery, and where that stone is right there, that marks the extent of the Pauper's Field. And the Pauper's Field is the field where people were buried, not because they were paupers, the poor farm had its own graveyard, but for people who died in Easton of unknown relationships. So the very first ones of these stones were put in, burials were put in during colonial period, and the very last one so far was just about 40 years ago when sadly, a corpse of a dead baby was found on Stonehill property, and Louis Silver made sure that that was buried in that graveyard. So this was where on both sides of the street, and supposedly under the street, there's supposedly gravestones under Church Street. This was common land. This was land that was held by everybody in common. And that was a feature of 18th century life. People did things together. It wasn't everybody for himself. Underlined in red are the Old Meeting House and the West Meeting House. And Easton is noted by historians as the place where there was the great church controversy. And people argued over the location of the meeting house. The West Meeting House is a little east of where the center of town is. Does anybody know where the center of town is? Yeah, you would think, but it's not. That actually marks where the West Meeting House was. It's actually down at where Black Brook runs into Depot Street. They actually, because the controversy was so intense, somebody from the state was sent out with surveying equipment to find the exact center of town, and that's where it was. They put up a pile of stones, which of course Eastoners just ignored, and put the church where they wanted to put it. We could go into the church controversy. It's very, very interesting. It happened in the 1750s at a time when there were a lot of denominations all of a sudden challenging the power of the Congregational Church, which was not only church but state. We have to credit some of these sects with actually establishing religious freedom here in, he's going to hold up a card. Okay. I have another, he's going to hold up a napkin. One of the things about these religions, people insisted upon the right to worship with the church of their choice. Well, that's great. That's fantastic. The Congregational church was paid for by tax money, and they insisted upon getting their tax money. So the big fight was, well, you know, if we have a minister on our own, why do we have to pay the Congregational minister? Ultimately, what happened was the state legislature passed a law that says, yes, all you have to do is pay one minister, and then the thrifty people of Easton, probably the same people that are going to be at town meeting tomorrow night, said, wait a second, our Congregational minister goes to Harvard and considers himself to be a very important person and charges a lot. The Baptists, on the other hand, their guy has the same job as the original Christian. He was a carpenter. And 6 days a week he worked in his carpenter shop, and 1 day a week he was the minister. We don't have to pay him anything. So all of a sudden, a large number of Easterners became what they call tax Baptists. The Baptists, however, had a hard time getting started because they were the radicals. And the reason I have a picture of this lady here is that she actually comes along later. But the church was a place where women had a little bit more influence and power than they would in the community as a whole, particularly if you were the minister's wife. And this is Olive Reed. She was the minister of the wife of the minister of the Congregational church at the center. Up above, you can see some really old-fashioned writing, and it says Mary Prentice, daughter of Solomon and Sarah Prentice. Solomon was an earlier Congregational minister. His wife didn't buy that Congregational stuff. She became a Baptist. She became an immortal Baptist. She believed, as did many people in our area, that you weren't going to die. We were living in the millennial age, and I have 5 minutes, and I could do it too. She was living in the millennial age, and she might pass away for a few days and then pop back up. The minister at the Norton Church was so assured that he was going to pop back up. He said, bury me under the floorboards of the church. And after about 2 weeks, they had to dig him up. But Mrs. Prentice became more and more radical as her time went on. The entry here in Latin basically says, my daughter was baptized by a layman, and while I was away, and that's why he was trying to hide it in the church records. Olive Reed, on the other hand, was a much more straight-laced person, but she refused to join her husband's church until she had more experience listening to his sermons. And ultimately she did join, and she became the very first feminist here in Easton, Massachusetts. She was out fighting to get people to sign petitions not to have slavery in Washington, D.C., or not to allow Florida to come in as a slave state. And her house is the one that's falling down across the street from the monument. The chairman of the Historical Commission is right now. We all did that together. So the very first things that you did to start a town is put in mills. And I have these complicated pictures just to show you that even though it was the 18th century, the technology was pretty complicated. I challenge you to build one of these mills and make it work. The grist mill ground the corn, and Easton is one of the very few places in New England that actually has a grist mill quarry, grist mill stone quarry on Stonehill College campus, and you can go and visit that. House building was community oriented. Nobody hired a contractor who came in and built it with a crew. The people worked on it all by themselves, you know, cutting the wood and getting everything ready. And then when it was time to put the house up, they brought in the neighbors and did a house raising, just like you might have seen Amish country barn raisings, which are still popular today. This is the first house in Easton. It's on Bay Road, erected in 1717. Yeah, the first people came in 1694. Those houses all fell down. This one has lasted since 1717, but the two-story one up above is actually from Taunton. No, it can't be 5 minutes yet. Yeah. He's just warming up and trying. I feel intimidated here. But I know where I'm going. So they dropped the floor out of this house. So it went from being the Garrison-style house up above to the Cape Cod-style house down below. The sills rotted out, and rather than build a new house, they just dropped it down. This is what it would probably have looked like inside. This house was built in 1778, and in 1778, this was the home of the Hayward family. They built on the original property that they had built in 1713. The richest man in town was Edward Hayward. His estate was valued at $127,866, which was pretty good for 1760 when he died. 10% of his wealth was tied up in, there it is, right here, a mulatto boy. He was a slave owner. We did have slavery. I'm gonna go one more minute. You can grab it. Yeah. Oh, that's 1 minute. Good. Okay. So I wanted to point out there was slavery here in Easton, and there were also many people later in the 19th century who fought to get slavery abolished. I have to speak about entrepreneurship. Most people were farmers, but beginning about 1810 when the Belcher family built this house, iron making became super duper important. And iron making in a blacksmith shop moved on to iron making in a blast furnace, like down at Furnace Village. It also led to having a lot of trees chopped down to make charcoal to run those blast furnaces. And then finally in 1803, the year that the horse thief was arrested and taken out of town, all of the names came to town. I'm sure there's no name. This just shows you how to make the typical shovel of the time period. And the little guy with the mustache and beard is John Bisbee. John Bisbee was the genius behind shovel handles. The blades are handled by Oliver Ames. Bisbee, for 60 years, made shovel handles. And here is the patented Ames. This is where the money came from, shovel. This was dug out of a river in California, because once the gold rush arrived, Ames shovels are actually used as currency. And the thing that's important about this shovel are all those rivets. This is a backstrap shovel, which was patented by the Ames family in 1817. And just like the deed to Clement Briggs' house, nobody can locate the patent anymore. The patent office brought it out. This is a picture of the handle shop, and it's a picture of two oxen up there. If anybody has seen some of my presentations, I always try to include that picture. That's my lucky oxen. But the Ames Shovel Works never ever had a yard. They never used the locomotive to move things around. They just used the oxen all the way into the 20th century. Two more slides. Ultimately, it wasn't just making shovels in town. Early entrepreneurship, beginning in the 1820s and 1830s, was the Poole Instrument Factory, which was located down on Foundry Street, just down towards Five Corners from where the regional school is now. And they did some incredible high-tech stuff. This is a surveyor's transit here, right there. This is a pocket compass, just like you would use if you were a Boy Scout today. And one thing I didn't show was a surveyor's transit. And we believe that one of the surveyor's transits that Henry David Thoreau used was a Poole shovel. This is the Poole family. And they made most of their money out of making these levels, which come from 150 years ago, and if the glass bead hasn't been broken, they still work perfectly. And finally, we want to show off something you can go and see. This is the Morse factory. The Morse factory built on the idea of iron machinery and interchangeable parts, which was developed here in Easton. This interchangeable parts was developed, and they made all sorts of thread-making machinery, and ultimately in the 20th century, they made automobiles. And this is a 1907 Morse car, and this one over here is the prototype from 1899, or maybe even a little bit earlier, and you can actually go and see that at the Historical Society. So very, very quickly to sum up, we went from a farming community to a community who had an economy based on iron and machinery, and that's where I'm going to leave you in the 1830s. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I appreciate you. I can listen to you for hours and hours and hours. But so I'd like to introduce Ken Michel. He is the head of the Historical Society and does great work. And you've been the president for how long? How many years? Too many. 10th. Wow. Okay. All right. Without much ado, Ken, why don't you come on up here?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me here tonight. I kind of feel like that basketball player who followed Michael Jordan when Michael Jordan left the Chicago Bulls. That's what it feels like following Ed Hands when you have to get up and speak. So I'll do my very best. My topic is tonight Easton's military service. If you think about that, that's a pretty long and broad topic. So what I've tried to do is concentrate on either individuals, mainly individuals who have some contribution or have not some contribution, but who've made a contribution and who had something interesting more than just, not that it's uninteresting, but more than just serving in the military. Easton has a long history of military service. Shortly after Lexington and Concord, members of the Easton Militia went to Boston, where they fought in the siege of Boston for a few months, and when that was over, they came back to Easton. It was about a third of the then roughly 291 militia members. At that time, and I don't know how accurate this is, but the population of Easton was about 1,125 people, and something I said, and approximately 1/3, 25% to 1/3 of the population was a portion of the militia. One of the first men to enlist was Elisha Harvey. He enlisted as a regular in the Continental Army, and just by way of coincidence, if you were to go outside at the exhibit table that we have out there, you'll see what is reputed to be Elisha Harvey's powder horn, and several other implements that were used during that period of time in the military for equipment and ammunition, so forth. He served in General Knox's artillery unit, and he fought bravely at the Battle of Brooklyn Heights, and Brooklyn Heights was a defeat for the Continental Army, but Elisha Harvey and his compatriots covered the retreat of the Continental Army from Brooklyn Heights and performed heroically. Another early member of the Continental Army was Captain James Perry. He served with the Continental Army at the battles of Trenton and Princeton, New Jersey, He also owned a blast furnace up in the Pequannock area behind Old Pond, and he manufactured ammunition, cannonballs, bullets, and cannons for the Continental Army. And that's also part of why that's called the Furnace Village, all the iron furnaces. The one thing that I took away when looking at the Revolutionary War was an episode here that involves 23 Easton men who served with Captain Ephraim Burr in the 2nd Massachusetts Regiment of the Continental Army. At the Battle of Saratoga, New York, which is considered the turning point of the war between, excuse me, the American and British forces, the second battle, including all of those, the 2nd Battalion, including all of those Easton men, 23 of them, turned a British defeat into a rout in 2 separate attacks that pretty much broke the back of the British Army. And after Saratoga, the 2nd decamped with Washington to Valley Forge, where every single Easton man stayed the course. Not one deserted during one of the worst winters in military history. Others did. Interestingly enough, in the intermission, it was just a statement by the African-American comedian there about black soldiers being freed after the Revolutionary War. Well, Easton did have some African-American soldiers in the Revolutionary War. The 3 of these men are listed Massachusetts soldiers and sailors in the Revolutionary War. They are Fortune Conkany, Joseph Green, and Anthony Hayward. Usually, the African Americans who served in the Revolutionary War were slaves, and they were fighting to see if they could earn their freedom. Some did, some went to court to secure it, and others did not. But I've got an exhibit outside, and I think many of you have seen it by now, of the Continental Army equipment, as I mentioned, Elisha Harvey's powder horn. Jumping forward a little bit, the next fellow that I came across that I thought was pretty heroic and a pretty interesting figure is in the Civil War. His name is Dr. George Badger Cogswell. If you go downtown and you're standing in front of the Farmer's Daughter and you look across the street at the Northeastern Grammar School, that was the site of his home. He moved here in 1860. He was appointed the postmaster in roughly 1860, right around there. His home was moved later. Later, his home was moved prior to the building of the Northeastern Grammar School, but it is off to the, as you face it, it's off to your left in the far back. The interesting thing about Dr. Cogswell is this. He served during the Civil War in the 29th Massachusetts Volunteers. And he was, it's kind of hard to describe, in the Peninsula Campaign in Virginia, he, when the Confederates overran his positions, stayed on the battlefield. And he stayed with his comrades, and he went with them into the various prisons, most notably Libby Prison, which was located in Richmond, Virginia. Libby Prison was a hellhole. It may have been second only to what is known as Andersonville Prison, but Dr. Cogswell, somehow or another, convinced the Confederate forces that he should have essentially free rein in treating the prisoners in Libby Prison, and many, many men were saved by his actions in the prisons. Just an interesting note, his younger brother was General William Cogswell, and he served in the Union Army Field Department. He was with the 2nd Massachusetts Volunteers. He served at Antietam, Chancellorsville, and the Siege of Atlanta. These two gentlemen were very, very active during the Civil War. Excuse me. Dr. Cogswell served until about 1864, when during the siege of Knoxville, he became seriously ill, and he was discharged and returned to Easton and to 115 Main Street, he purchased 115 Main Street at that time. He was the personal physician to Frederick Lothrop Ames and Governor Oliver Ames. He was a pretty interesting guy even beyond that. He did a whole lot of stuff. He was the librarian prior to the Ames Free Library from 1869 to 1880. He served as road commissioner, served as a member of the Board of Water Commissioners. He was very instrumental in establishing the Paul Dean Lodge of the Masons, of which he was a charter member and its first master. And he was also a charter member of the A.B. Randall Post 52 of the Grand Army of the Republic. He was pretty busy, but unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 61 in 1896. I thought when I first started reading about him, and we actually had an open house, and there's a picture of Dr. Cogswell located at the Historical Society. I was really impressed. I thought to myself, how did he get so much done in so little time? He died at 61. But he obviously was a very brave man because he risked his own life to save the lives of his fellow soldiers. Another interesting military personage in Easton was Admiral George Francis Faxon Wild. Sure. Am I running out of time already? Oh. No, I'm good. Admiral Wild was born in Braintree, and he lived lived in Easton for many years. You can actually see his house. If you get on from Main Street onto Center, down on the right-hand side, you'll see a large kind of mansard roofed home. It's actually the largest lot in Northeastern, and that was his home. He entered the Naval Academy in 1861 in Newport at the time, and the legend is that he walked all the way to Boston to take his examinations. His first command was the steel cruiser, the Dolphin, in 1886, and he took that ship on a 3-year-round world cruise. He was very instrumental in the Spanish-American War. At Manila Bay during the Spanish-American War, he was made commander of the battleship Oregon, which he served from 1899 to 1901. Later, excuse me, his final command was the Boston Navy Yard until his retirement in 1905. He died in 1911 from heart trouble. But I'm not sure that everybody knows that we had our very own admiral, and he was a pretty famous one during the Spanish-American War. Excuse me. We're going to go now to World War I. World War I, we had a very, very interesting military figure who was a member of the Ames family, Oliver Ames Jr. He was born at Sheep Pasture, lived there with his family. As a side note, his sister Olivia became a nurse, which was pretty unheard of at the time. Excuse me. Oliver wanted to serve, so he went into the United States Army, and he wound up in an interesting regiment. It was originally known as the 165th Regiment, but it's more well known today as the Fighting 69th. And the Fighting 69th was commanded by another legendary figure by the name of Wild Bill Donovan, who later went on to form in World War II the Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner to the CIA. it also had as its chaplain a Father Duffy. Father Duffy was the most decorated chaplain in World War I. And interestingly enough, there was another individual in that regiment whose name was Joyce Kilmer. Joyce Kilmer was a poet, and I'm sure some of you may know some of his poems. The most famous one is the one that I had to learn in the first grade, which was called Trees. It was terrible. But he did have a poem that was based on an actual combat, which was called Rouge Bouquet. And it was Rouge Bouquet was a forest in which the Fighting 69th had a pretty tough time. Oliver Ames rose rapidly within the Fighting 69th, which was mainly made up of Irish Americans. And he became the adjutant to Wild Bill Donovan, who at that time was a major, was later a colonel. And he served very bravely throughout all the campaigns. And I have a tough time pronouncing the name of this particular battle. But as adjutant to Donovan, he and Donovan were engaged in a conversation at the Battle of Mercy in its farm at the Ourcq River in France. According to Donovan, Lieutenant Ames and he were talking when a German sniper killed Lieutenant Ames with a bullet through his ear. Interestingly enough, the poet Joyce Kilmer took over the next day as adjutant, and a day later, he was discovered shot by a sniper. I think it was bad luck to hang out with Wild Bill Donovan in those days. But the further interesting side is really non-military. It's really a Hollywood movie. There was a Hollywood movie made called The Fighting 69th, and it starred George Brent as Major Donovan. It's Pat O'Brien as Father Duffy. James Cagney played a fictional private, but a fellow by the name of Dennis Morgan played Oliver Ames Jr. of Sheep Pasture. And so we'll move on. I was trying to get to World War II, and you know, there are so many things, so many people of interest in World War II that I found myself really struggling to single out one. So what I thought was that I would just basically list those who gave the utmost sacrifice from the town of Easton. Robert Chisholm, April 17th, 1945, Germany. Paul Farrell, December 25th, 1945, Honshu Island, Japan. Robert Fernandez, Robert Hagelin, September 30th, France. Albert Ham, November 9th, 1944, France. Frank Hewitt, March 13th, 44, England. He died in a training accident. Brian Nolan, May 11th, 1946, died in the Pacific, a training accident. And Oliver Ames Parker, July 24th, 1943, died in California, another training accident during the war. Patrick Shea, July 16th, 1943, France. And Stanley Smith, November 21st, 1944, England. Anthony Souza, 1943, England. Looking at Korea, there were several folks from Easton who served in Korea that were noteworthy. One, Ernie Camara. You may know him. Ernie was the town accountant for a number of years. He served in the 1st Marine Division, and and he was in the Marine Corps during the Korean War from 1952 to 1954. The only casualty from Easton in the Korean War that I was able to locate was Robert Thompson, United States Navy. He was killed in action June 19th, 1953. I also looked at, and I thought to myself, how many of our veterans came back not only Easton veterans, but others, and did great things with their life. And I came across one Easton resident, John Leonard. John Leonard was a 1948 graduate of Olive Ames High School. He's the older brother of Ed Leonard, who's a member of the Easton Historical Society and contributes to reminiscences periodically. He moved to Easton in 1941. He played sports. He was a baseball player, an even better tennis player. He served in the U.S. Army Signal Corps in Korea. He received 2 Bronze Stars. One of them was for action where he went through enemy lines bringing messages to the various groups and regiments, troops, fighting against the Korean and Chinese troops. Because the radios were out. They had no radio contact with each other, and he, on a number of occasions, went back and forth through the lines to give orders, relay instructions, etc. 2 Bronze Stars. Later on in life, he became a coach, and he coached tennis, just a very quick. He coached for 33 years at Cranston High School East and 17 years at Community College of Rhode Island. While coaching in high school, he won 6 state championships from 1964 to 1969. He won New England championships in 67 and 68, and a remarkable 71 consecutive tennis matches. He also did an awful lot of work in the community, teaching children and instructing them. He's a member of the Rhode Island State Tennis Hall of Fame. When we get to Vietnam, this is where it gets personal. If you go around town, you see the various blue signs on the various street corners, and many of them referencing Vietnam veterans who were killed in action, and I know them. Lieutenant Ken Scully. Ken Scully graduated 2 years ahead of me, Olive Ames High School. He was very active on the athletic department side. He was a manager. He was killed in How My Village, May 26th, 1970. Graduated from high school in 1966. Private Robert Todd. Bobby Todd was a friend of my brother's. He was killed on May 9th, 1967. And the thing that hit me was, that would have been the month he graduated. Many of you may know of or have known Eddie Smith. And I know there was a program done by Mark Bergeron about Eddie. Eddie was a year behind me in high school. We played football together, played basketball together. He was a good guy, he was a good athlete. And all 3 of these people died all too soon. And as I said, when I started to read about Vietnam and I started to look at it, it became personal. I have 2 close friends who are Vietnam veterans, Steve Jiggs Nolan and a fellow named Bill Landry. And Bill Landry and I arrived in Easton at the same time in 1960 as carpetbaggers from Boston. And to this day, we still get together. How's my time looking, Coach? I think this means I'm out. Where's Dave Clifton? Dave, what's this mean? Well, on that note, I will leave Iraq and Afghanistan, Kuwait, for the next person who does this. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, so I'd like to invite Bill Ames. Bill Ames, you didn't leave us, did you? Come on up here. Bill needs no introduction. Longtime member of the community, he's done so much.
Slide to slide. Press that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to present in front of all of you. I have, truth be told, 20 minutes and 75 slides. So it's time to play Beat the Clock. So here's my task, talk about why Easton's called Shoveltown and the Ames family's legacy. Okay, there's the founder of the shovel company, which you're all familiar with, Oliver Ames Sr. He came here in about 1803, and he lived at 46 Pond Street, which is where my brother Fred currently resides. A very nice house with a blue front. And across the street, you can see there is what we call the Island, which was where the original Leonard Works were. He leased the Leonard Works and started his own business there. And I think he commuted back and forth to Plymouth a little bit. But the secret to Oliver Ames's expertise of why did he start to do all this was the fact that he had his older brother David, who was 19 years older than he was the superintendent of the Springfield Armory, which in Springfield, Massachusetts, which where they manufactured rifles, weapons. And as a result, Oliver was there for 4 years as an intern. So he picked up a lot of sophistication about interchangeable parts and metal working and mass production. So when he arrived in Easton, he had this all in his head. That was his vision. The guy had a lot of vision. He bootstrapped it along. So you can see, looking at this, is the sort of thing they manufactured back then. There's a lot of sophisticated metalwork that goes into it, but he knew how to do it. I mean, they were just doing shovels at that point. And plows and so forth. So flash forward 70 years, and there it is. The manager was his son. I call them managers because I don't know what their titles were, but he was the front man. Oakes was the son of old Oliver, and he was sort of the front man who traveled to New York and San Francisco and whatever and established the business relationships. And as you can see, that's a reminder of how big it had gotten. And he was also involved in the Transcontinental Railroad, which was a bit of a awkward situation for him, but turned out all right. So built the Panama Canal. That's certainly much after his time, but they were there. They were clients. Oakes would have dealt with the government on that. And here his legacy, talking legacy now, his legacy is the Oakes Ames Memorial Hall, which his children financed, which was really emblematic, not only of Oakes, but of the shovel company and the community in Easton, or 3,000, 4,000 strong, most of whom worked for the shovel company. So it was sort of a big team. Here's a fellow I'm descended from, which is Oakes' brother, Oliver's son, Oliver Ames Jr. And this he dedicated in his will and his estate. He left money for the library. You can see that's a H.H. Richardson interior there, and you've seen that many times, in the church, and the famous Lafarge windows. This is his legacy, Oliver Ames Jr.'s legacy, with these stained glass windows. He didn't put them in himself, but he paid for them and made sure they got delivered here. Next generation was the manager, Oakes Ames. He was all shovels all day. Fortunately for his descendants, so it all turned out well. But he took over from his father and grandfather, and he was sort of a clique like the Alfred P. Sloan of General Motors. He got the systems in, made sure things worked correctly, modern techniques. So what's the legacy of the Shovel Works? Well, I can say the Ames Apartments. My apartment is just up to the right there, above the bell. And of course, Easton YMCA, which is one of the old shovel company buildings, so that's where many of us go every day. Then there was another manager, Governor Oliver Ames, who was Oakes' son, and his legacy to Easton was that he financed the building of the high school, which they named after him after he died. So it was not going to be the Oliver Ames High School. So this is our friend and neighbor, Suzanne Bump. When Suzanne Bump moved to Easton, she was a state auditor. And she noticed, God bless her, that there was no painting of Oliver Ames from Easton in the hallways. So she's made some inquiries, and she found it was down in the archives, deep in the cellar. So she made sure it got up. It took a couple of years, but this is her at the ceremony getting his portrait up there. So God bless her. So the governor's wife had quite a legacy for Easton. Anna C. Ames, sports and food. Here's the Anna C. Ames Gymnasium, where the girls played and the boys played. They had quite an active. She used to get doctors out after the girls played. She had a doctor stand nearby to prove that it was okay for women to play basketball. So they'd get examined. So that's what she would do, and she was quite a star. And this is the Anna C. Ames marching band. The ladies there, I don't know where they marched, but they took it very seriously. This is her cookbook. You can see brown bread ice cream in the bottom there. So Anna C. Ames didn't let much grass grow underneath. You could tell that. So Frederick Lothrop Ames, who was my great-grandfather, was his lasting legacy to the town of Easton was on architecture. And H.H. Richardson, as we all know. Here are the 4 Richardson buildings in Easton, the Gate Lodge, the railroad station, the Oakes Ames Hall, and the library. So he had his son, education and farming. This was Lothrop Ames. What was his legacy? Well, this was part of his business, I guess, which was the Guernsey cattle up at Stonehouse Hill Farm. There's he on the right with the Irish cap. So his lasting legacy to the town of Easton was the fact that his house, his estate, and all the land became Stonehill College. So that is really, what did he leave to us? He left to us a college, or the physical thing, and obviously the Holy Cross Fathers built a college. To them go the credit, but that was his legacy. Sally Blair Ames Sports Complex. This was his granddaughter. Left quite a bit of money to the college, and part of the legacy of her legacy is the sports complex there. Queeset Garden, to whom many of you are familiar with, certainly. Winthrop Ames was a producer in Broadway, and he spent the time in the summer up here for a couple of weeks. Queeset Garden, there you see the music and the lectures that go on in the summertime. So that was his legacy, was this gathering place in this very nice setting. And of course, the Queeset House, which the library bought, was another part of his legacy, which we all go in there for programs and so on and so forth. So now we all heard of Blanche Ames Ames. She was a women's suffrage. She was married to the Professor Oakes Ames up at Borderland. And her legacy was really to do with women's suffrage and all over the state, but she had many presentations in this hall, all written up in the newspapers. So her legacy is embodied by the fact that they named the great honor of naming this recent school after her. So that was a very nice thing. So this is Professor Oakes Ames. This was her husband. And what was his legacy? His legacy was the Ames Mansion and indeed Borderland State Park. He and Blanche collaborated on building the house. In fact, I think it was mostly Blanche. But nevertheless, that's the legacy that those two left to the town and to the state, because it's one of the most popular state parks, I'm told. The Friends of Borderland, many of us know Oakes Ames Plimpton. He was a grandson of the professor, and Blanche. He founded the Oakes Ames. He founded the Friends of Borderland, no doubt with some others who may be in this room. That was my grandfather, John S. Ames. He was one of the, he organized his siblings to pay for the Northeastern Grammar School, and they built that, I think, in the 1920s. And some of us remember Miss McFadden and the white bench, all that sort of thing. I had to pay big money to get put on the white bench because I wanted the bragging rights years later, so she cooperated. She said, well, I'll give you a rap on the knuckles. Could talk about that 100 years later, so she was nice. My grandfather had flowers and whatever. I don't know, that's a real legacy to Easton. But Frothingham Park, Mary Ames Frothingham, here's her first off, rather, she paid for the fire station. And That is now, of course, the Children's Museum, so I think she could take a little bit of credit somewhere for that. And Frothingham Park, which we've all been to, which is operated in an endowment that she left, of course, built up over the years. This is her husband, Louis A. Frothingham, who was a congressman for Easton, and apparently quite a fine fellow. This is my grandmother, Nancy Philly Ames, right there. She's being interviewed. Looks like a cool customer, you know. She was a wonderful person. And she donated the town hall. Mrs. Frothingham died, and she bought the town hall, Wayside they called it in those days, and then she decided, she talked to the town, and they said sure. So she donated it to the town, and that's what we see now when we go to pay our taxes and do our meetings and everything, thanks to my grandmother and Mrs. Frothingham, really. Now the ghost of Stonehill College, Freddie Ames. Many of you have heard of him. Sadly died in his early 30s, but he was a pilot. That's the aim. So his legacy really was some aviation. That's the runway down there in that big field. There's really no good picture, but you could see the Ames School of Aviation in southeastern Mass. It's some sort of invoice. There is a picture of him, and sadly, just before he died, crashed in Randolph. And to this day, there is the legend of the Blue Mist, which somehow is up at Stonehill, which is somehow connected to Freddie Ames. So that's his legacy. He's a ghost. Stonehill. Not too bad duty. This is Elise Ames Parker. She was a cousin of my father's, and that was her family sheep pasture house, which was too big for current day. And so she tore it down, and she donated the land and everything to the Natural Resources Trust. So this is the sheep pasture. That was that. So that is Cousin E's legacy, and she left some nice endowments with her husband, William A. Parker. There's dear old Dad and Mom. I have to sneak them in here. And their grandson. So my father's, well, first off, he was involved with a donation of the railroad station to the Easton Historical Society. He was one of three, but he helped get it organized. And you all know the story of showing up at the meeting where Hazel Varela received the keys to this building. I think it was in 1970 or 68. One of the great success stories in our town. So that's part of his legacy. And he left the clock farm, which he gave that to Stonehill. And but what his big contribution was, my family was fortunate to have done pretty well financially. And so over the years, they left trusts and endowments, big ones, small ones. So my father realized that, you know, if you had 10 or 11 of these, it was going to be very hard in the future to manage these things. So what he did was he created an analogous thing to a mutual fund. And so all the funds are invested in one pot, and they're separate entities, and by deed of gift, they go to the NRT, to the library, to the park, and every year it's quite a bit of money come out of those trusts to support some of these charities here. So that was a great legacy that he did. He lawyered up and got it done, and it was a lot of work. That was dear old Mom. Mom's legacy was that she wanted her place to go to the trustees of reservations. This is where we were brought up. We've all seen the pavilion there. Just, don't you all agree? It's a wonderful sight. It's really uplifting and nice. She'd be so pleased. So she made sure that happened. John S. Ames, who many of us remember here, is my first cousin. He was in politics. He was a state rep for, I think, 3 terms. There he is marching in Easton's 250th parade in June of that year. So the Ames Realty Trust, this is a bit of a stretch, but I'd like to get credit next to Langwater Farm. But so Ames Realty Trust owned all the land that the Langwater Farm is on now. So these guys, and Minnie and my brother David and Ollie, and well known to many of you here, they managed the trust, and they recruited Kevin and Kate, and they helped them get started and make sure they got the money, or helped them get the money. I mean, to Kevin and Kate certainly goes the glory, but the legacy of the Ames Realty Trust really is Langwater Farm. For long time we did nothing with that land. We had a long period of self-criticism. So why aren't we doing anything? You know, nothing. So along comes Kate and Kevin, and I said, well, of course we didn't do anything because we were waiting for Mohammed to get to the mountain or something like that. So here you see the familiar scenes. So this is Bill Ames, yours truly. So I started with the help of Ed Hands, the Hockomock Film Festival 25 years ago, and others as well. So that's, I guess, my legacy, as well as 100 meals at Corfinio. And a ton of spaghetti bolognese, my favorite. So the Easton Legacy Fund, this is my brother David and some others. They're building an endowment with gifts from friends of Easton committed to sustaining and enhancing our town's rich quality of life. We've so far given 5 or 6 awards over 5 years. And 5, thank you, Ken. And Ken Michael is a key part of that, as is Gary Berman, who's over there. Gary, nice to see you here tonight. So this is a new venture, and this will be our legacy, Easton Legacy Fund, which will be to help various not-for-profits like the NRT or ECAT do specific projects. That's not we identify them and we award them. And here's my brother Fred, President of the Board of Trustees. Fred, let's give Fred a hand. So Fred, as we all know, is the head of the Board of Trustees here. He's done an amazing job. That's pretty elegant. I don't think you can match that in too many towns around here. And the people have had generations of good times in there. And here's Fred at the premiere of the world premiere band concert. He's a rock mogul. So, but I think the hall is really emblematic of all these legacies. All the town working together, and the corporation, the Ameses, who worked in the factories too, certainly, built a very unique town. And I think it's the hall, because of its magnitude and its size, is really emblematic of that cooperative, that team effort. And I'm so pleased that there's talk of getting an elevator and air conditioning, and that would be wonderful for the future. So there's Oliver. So how we doing, Oliver? So, thank you very much.
Wow. He did all that, like 60 plus slides and probably, I don't know, 17 and a half minutes. So he had 2.5 more minutes left to go. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick tour de force with the Easton Lions history. And I'll be focusing on the early years, first and foremost. So in order to give you an idea of the Easton Lions, we're a subset of Lions Club International. I have to talk about Lions Club International, which was founded by Melvin Jones. Melvin Jones owned an insurance industry and served as the secretary for the Chicago Business Circle. And he sought and received permission from that group to invite similar groups together across the U.S. to meet and form a larger group, which was focused primarily on serving others. This is something fairly new. I mean, you had a lot of networking groups, and they're all trying to, improve their lives and business. But here, he wanted to create a philanthropic organization. He lived by his motto, which was, "You don't get very far until you start doing something for somebody else." And so the groups met in Chicago in 1917. Where they all agreed to merge and form a larger group. They took on the name of one of the groups from Illinois called the Association of Lions Clubs, and so it was born in that moment. So 3 years later, with the addition of a club in Windsor, Canada, we became an international organization. Melvin eventually left his insurance business, and he dedicated himself fully to Lions business. He spent the next 3 to 4 decades being employed by Lions Club International. The Lions Clubs expanded rapidly throughout the U.S. and then eventually throughout the world. A watershed moment for Lions Club International was when we invited Helen Keller to show up to the 8th Annual Lions Convention in 1925 in Cedar Point, Ohio. Now, Helen Keller, who was blind and was also mute, she was she was deaf and she was blind as well, managed to overcome her challenges. And at this point, she achieved national notoriety, probably not international notoriety yet, but she was brought in to be the guest speaker. And probably unbeknownst to the attendees, this little Spitfire went up there and she issued a challenge to the Lions. She said, "Will you not constitute yourselves Knights of the Blind in this crusade against darkness? You Lions who are so brave, strong, noble, and kind, can you do this for me?" And she threw down that gauntlet. And of course, the Lions graciously picked it up, and henceforth we became known as Knights of the Blind. Now that's an AI image that I had made, and I have another one further on in the slide deck. So we enthusiastically accepted her challenge. The first Lions Club in Massachusetts was formed in Boston in 1920. It was followed by the one in Springfield in 1922. I'm getting to Easton. Circa 1929, Melvin Jones sent 2 Lions Club International employees. They were brothers, Curtis and Merlin Gillette, to put Lionism on the map in New England. And if you're wondering why every New England town you go through, it says Lions Clubs, as you enter the town border, it's largely because of these 2 guys, at least in our area of New England. So in about 4 years, these guys succeeded beyond everybody's wildest expectations. They oversaw the creation of 84 clubs located across the 4-state region. Curtis and the younger brother Merlin, they were originally from Lake City, Minnesota, but they temporarily resided in Connecticut at the time. They likely traveled to Easton by train circa August, September 1931. And when they arrived, they probably met congenial, was an adjective loaned to the station master, Bill Fenwick. And Bill Fenwick eventually became our King Lion. So this is a map with pins in all the places that the Gillette brothers helped form Lions Clubs. Simply incredible. 84 in less than 4 years. And we're one of them. So on September 16, 1931, Curtis and Merlin Gillette, they met with Station Master Bill Fenwick and a bunch of Easton's prominent people, businessmen and public officials, at the Minnetonka Restaurant, which is located in where CVS is off of 138. And a mere 15 days later, we had our charter meeting at the same club. So we were sponsored by the Attleboro Lions, and there were a total of 22 people, the first of the Easton Lions, and we signed the charter there. And they came from a variety of occupations and places of origin. Our president was originally from Brunswick, Canada, our vice president from Vermont, our secretary from Portland, Maine. Like our present-day meetings, the charter meeting was catered, and it commenced with the Song of America, an invocation, and a Lions Club toast. Now, a Lions Club toast is always with water, and we go not above you, not beneath you, but with you, which is very emblematic of the way we view ourselves. We're all equal, us as Lions. The Easton Lions, their 3 main stated categories were bettering education, improving public health, and fighting poverty. Of course, it was at the height of the Great Depression in 1931. Early on, there was a major focus on child welfare projects and activities. As the Easton Lions were starting to embrace their role as Knights of the Blind, they became Easton's Knights of the Smile. Now, I had this thing generated by AI, and you could see the smiling knights, and you see the smiling tiger. I'm pretty impressed, with my work here. So before we became a club, the Easton school system decided to hire a full-time nurse. Her name was Grace Murch, and by all accounts that I can determine, she was a standout. She was very active, she was proactive, and she documented her work very well. So in 1931, during examinations of this is a real number, 1,111 children here in Easton, 85% had dental defects. 85%. And it was characterized in the town, the annual town report as an appalling figure. Consequently, a dental campaign was launched under the direction of the school nurse, and local dentists John Dunley and Harold Smith were employed. to conduct conduct further on examinations. They both were Easton Lions, founding fathers. And in January 1932, the Easton Lions established a dental clinic. Get this, a dental clinic in Oliver Ames High School for the treatment of all students. Now, initially, they focused on grades 1 through 8. Interestingly, 7 of the 22 farmers had ties to the Easton public school system. So for public employees, we had the superintendent in our club as a founding member, Oliver Ames principal, the main social studies teacher, and the main physical education teacher. And then for part-time health support, Dr. Harold Smith, who was a critical player for this dental clinic that I'm talking about, and his colleague, Dr. John Dunley, and then Dr. Robert Porter was a school physician. He conducted the physical exams for the kids. So the Lions appointed Dr. Harold Smith as dentist in charge with the school committee's approval, and he worked 2 mornings per week. He charged a small fee of 50 cents per treatment. However, services were free for families in need. The goal of the clinic was to identify and correct all dental defects, and what they wanted is signed certificates from dentists to be presented to the school to ensure that no kid was left behind. Exams, treatments, and certifications could be done either at the Lions Clinic or via a private dentist. As far as I can tell, I think most of them were accomplished by the dental clinic. Preventative dentistry was accentuated, through education. They taught the kids, what to eat, foods to avoid, and how to exercise proper hygiene with their teeth. And then the Easton Lions donated a dental chair, a dental engine or a drilling apparatus, a sterilization machine, and a storage cabinet. And Dr. Smith loaned his tools until the school could eventually purchase its own equipment. So here is a year that I could find the statistics in 1933. There were a total, after the exams, there were a total of 310 kids receiving dental care in the clinic, 82 cleanings, 41 temporary fillings, 204 permanent fillings, extractions with temporary teeth, 412, extractions with permanent teeth, 93, and free treatments, 100. So 100 out of the 310 were actually free, and then the other treatments, 50 cents a piece. The school system decided to expand the clinic. They hired a dental hygienist, Mariel Dahlborg, who worked 1 to 2 mornings a week. And the clinic, I don't know how long it operated, but it likely operated for at least a decade and more. And then this continued until children's dental needs could be met by other means. Also, during the period of the Great Depression, the Easton Lions funded medical treatments for children with serious vision defects for families in need. There were 11 cases in 1932 alone where we were funding kids to go to Massachusetts Eye and Air. The Lions also provided free eyeglasses for families in need. During a 3-year period, they provided eyeglasses to 22 different kids. And holiday baskets were gifted to families in need during Thanksgiving and at Christmas as well. During World War II, we were recognized as essential to the war effort. We raised money for war bonds, we recycled tin cans, we sent care packages to troops, and we distributed plants to homes so people can cultivate their own victory gardens. In the 1950s, we held child welfare nights with entertainment, very large Halloween parties for Easton's children at the high school, and we erected the memorial on Center Street to honor the World War II and Korean War vets. And in the 60s and the 70s, we raised funds through dances and golf tournaments. We provided 2 eye machines to the school district and scholarship to students. We sponsored summer playground programs for kids at multiple locations. Some of you might even remember it growing up. You go to like Frothingham Park and you're there for 6 weeks or so. That was sponsored by the Easton Lions. We funded that. And we sponsored bicycle rodeo competitions to promote bike safety. So Yardley Wood Rink was established in 1961. It was the brainchild of Lion Arthur Yardley, who wanted to create a safe skating area for Easton. Yardley was a civil engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers, and he leveraged the Corps to do much of the work. Yardley, unfortunately, met his untimely death in 1964 at the young age of 50. The club completed the rink, and they decided to dedicate it to him in February 1965. So they named it in his name. It was the Arthur Yardley Rink until much later. This gentleman by the name of Ken Wood, I'm sure you know Ken Wood. He's a serial do-gooder, like so many in the town, but I think he's got everybody beat. Ken, he did so much work there, and he was always at the rink, and he kept it going for many, many years. So the Lions, as an organization, decided to rename the rink to the Yardley Wood Rink, and it's still operating, as you know, and it's only operating because we're sponsoring it, and they do fall under our insurance umbrella, and that's the only way that they can operate. The annual holiday festival, show of hands of people who attended the annual holiday festival. It's been a thing since 1986, and I think John Morgan's out here somewhere. He quarterbacked that for like 30 years. So if you look up Glutton for Punishment in the encyclopedia, it actually has his photo. It's a beast. It really is a beast of a project. So many man hours, so many different components. How many of you remember the annual charity auction that we used to have? We held that for 33 years. So Dale Carrister for many, many years quarterbacked that effort. And unfortunately, it was a lot of fun to run. I loved that thing, and all the other Lions did too. Unfortunately, margin of diminishing returns as far as revenue went, and we decided to, that 2019 was the last year that we were going to run it, and that was kind of foretelling because COVID hit that right afterwards. I just want to highlight that the Easton Lions voted to permit women to join our club in 2002. Now, we could have done it technically in 1988 because the Lions Club International had changed its bylaws to permit women to join Lions clubs. It's always a local decision, but I'd like to point out that at the time, Easton had at least two all-female clubs that were very, very strong and viable. At any rate, in 2002, we decided to permit women. How many know Nancy Sullivan? Yeah, she joined early on, and she decided to enter the leadership track. So she entered the leadership track in 2008, which made her our president in 2007 through 8. So she was our first female president. Now, in 2008, the Lions Club International singled out the Easton Lions Club from over 45,000 other clubs in the world as the most outstanding club in the world. Now, if you look at this this banner over here, it says most outstanding club in the world in 2008. Small little Easton. We were able to achieve this honor. To my knowledge, no other club in Massachusetts, in this state, has ever been able to achieve that. And we achieved it while Nancy was our president, so it's quite remarkable. Easton Lions Thrift Store. How many of you been to the Easton Lions Thrift Store? It's a great place. Cheapest deals in town, 3 floors of treasures. That ball of fire over there, Sherry Anderson, she's got such an eye. She runs a lot of the internal aspects there. Her husband, Mark Ingalls, is over there. He's the director of operations. The two of them keep the place going. And just 12 to 15 volunteers show up every Saturday. Please come visit us. Celebration of Easton event. It's kind of what the auction morphed into. And this is the 4th iteration of the Celebration of Easton. And normally we target specific groups of people that we want to celebrate, people that have moved the bar in our community that make Easton the special place that it is. And we started that in 2020, right before COVID. and then we had a little bit of a hiatus for a couple of years, and then we started it back again. So Dale and I, we figured, why don't we celebrate Easton's history, this year during the tricentennial? It was kind of a no-brainer, and hence we're here right now. For fundraising, we do a variety of things. We give out a fair amount of money to local charities and Lions-related causes. One such fundraiser is the golf tournament. We have that every September, and we established that in 1999. The fishing derby is a completely free event that we offer to families with young children, even adolescents. They come, and many kids in Easton, they caught their first fish in that pond over at Governor Oliver Ames Recreation Park. I'm telling you, that's a target-rich environment. Last year, we caught 90 fish. I didn't get the tally on this year, but just the look of wonderment in kids' eyes as they reel in their first fish, it really is incredible. And the Easton Live. So that's Marky V, right? We have him hiding in the back, because we didn't want him to mix polite company, and Anyways, it's Marky V's brainchild. Marky realized that there were so many musicians that were home, stuck during the pandemic, just frustrated as heck, and then the rest of us were all like housebound, and he's like, hey, why don't we leverage ECAT? God bless you, ECAT, and we'll bring entertainment from Shoveltown. We had entertainers come in. They were socially distanced, and they played in Shoveltown. They were broadcast in ECAT, and then people can give us donations virtually, and we can raise money for charity. And so we did it. And then as soon as we were able to get people together, we had concerts and comedy nights, and really has been a success. Now, this upcoming week, Saturday at Shoveltown, there's this great band called 60s Thunder. That's my conscience right there. 60s Thunder, they're a great group. It's only a $5 admission. You should go. These guys they're going to have the place rocking. And the newest addition in fundraising has been the Classic Car Show. We've only done this one year. We did it at the Shaw's lot. We expected 80 cars to come, and well over 130 showed up. And the funny thing is ECAT does a great job at documenting a lot of our activities. And so, the car show has got more clicks than any other activity we've ever done. So it's like an ungodly amount of clicks. It's a very popular thing. This next year, we're going to have it at Southeast Regional. And that concludes my presentation. So our title is quite simple. It's We Serve. And where there is a need, usually you'll find a lion. I'd like to ask John Morgan to come to the front. He's going to give out a very special award to a very special person in our audience.
Thank you, King Lion.
Thank you.
This evening, the Avery Lee Williams Family Foundation presents the Avery Lee Williams Community Service Award. Regrettably, a conference commitment prohibits Williams family members from being present this evening to personally honor the recipient. I was asked to do the honors. I'm very proud to do so. This award recognizes an Easton resident who has made a significant impact on our community through various contributions. The award speaks to generosity, respect for our community, caring for others, and making Easton a better place. But most of all, it focuses on service to our community. When I was asked to make this presentation, I thought the committee had made a wonderful selection. In preparing my comments, I learned they made an amazing selection. Relocating from Randolph to Easton, Ed Hands made a change that impacted two communities. Randolph for the worse, Easton for the better. And while those roots are grounded in Randolph, his lineage dates back to William Marshall, the first Earl of Pembroke in medieval England times, and to Plymouth in 1620. In fact, Ed can trace his ancestry to at least 3 Pilgrim families, the the Brewsters, the Hopkins, and the Rogers. So it's only natural that Ed is enamored with history. Ed is the consummate teacher, and while this earned him a living teaching at Oliver Ames High School, it continues to educate many in and out of that classroom, and he continues to do so today. Ed is a man of many talents and is generous with his knowledge, time, and money. He's a supporter of anything that benefits this town. He's contributed to Easton in many ways. He was a founding member of the Easton Historical Commission and remains on that board. He's undeniably the go-to person with any question on Easton's history. His opinions are sought after and highly valued. He's been active in the Easton Historical Society for 50 years, and his walking tours of Easton are always a huge hit with the community, with clips from those tours getting over 1,000 views on Facebook. He was involved with the Easton Agricultural Commission and is an avid gardener. You might say he's Easton's gardener. He is dedicated to that pursuit. He was so involved in bringing into existence the community garden on Bay Road that it bears his name. It supports the New England Wildlife Center in Weymouth and is also known for having a deep knowledge of flora and fauna in our region. As a nature lover, getting involved in our NRT was a natural step for Ed. He's been involved for many years, serving as a board member and president. There, his passion for nature and animals was evident in every initiative. Ed consistently prioritized community engagement, which fostered meaningful connections and partnerships throughout Easton. Ed has a strong love of the arts, illustrated by his investment in film. As Bill mentioned earlier, he was involved in the creation of the Easton Film Festival back in 2002, which is now known as the Hockomock Film Festival. And this is the one that Kim Pincus of ECAT heads up today, yet Ed remains active in that group. The related Hockomock Film Club is still under his leadership, including holding regular meetings at Quisa House, and Ed is involved with the Film Connection on ECAT as well. And that features industry professionals, which is hosted by Priscilla Almquist and Bill Ames. When ECAT was founded in Easton, Ed was there. He was an original board member. He had a hand in the programming and in finding Jason, the original executive director. Ed's also active in our Ames Free Library, hosting genealogy workshops and lending valuable guidance to people who are researching their roots. He was the president of the Easton Grange and still is an active member. He joined that organization in 2014, helping in its resurrection. And here's another tie into gardening. Ed's working with Grange members to bring them the joy of gardening. Ed was involved in the Vision of Easton project. He's also on the Swift Park Committee, Easton's Community Preservation Committee as well. Learning more about this, I found out that Ed loves to golf. I don't know where he finds the time to golf. Our Lions Club enjoys a partnership with the Grange. They host our thrift store. This outreach not only brings in revenues for both organizations, but also provides a vehicle for purposing and recycling items both new and used, and serves a community in need of affordable home goods. As you might guess, Ed's imprint is found there as well. My connection with Ed is through our Lions Club. Ed joined us in 2013, and as is with everything else Ed Hands does, he is all in. Ed is our club historian, a leader of our annual fishing derby, active at the thrift store, the holiday festival, the golf ball drop, and any other activity where there's a need for a helping hand. Our town's connection with Ed is broad and deep. Ed is the embodiment of service. We are so fortunate to have Ed Hands in our midst, and I think you'll agree, he is amazing. Accompanying this recognition is an award of $5,000 to be donated to the charity of Ed's choice. You can start lining up over here. I'd like Ed to come up, and I want to thank the Avery Lee Williams Family Trust for this award and the opportunity to recognize Ed Hands.
Thank you so much. You know, so many of those things that he mentioned are organizations. They're people in our community all working together. And you know, that's epitomized by the Lions Club, but the Historical Society, the NRT, and all those organizations can't function with just one guy. it's all of us working together, and that's what makes Easton special. So thank you very much to the Lee Williams Foundation. I was a great friend of Lee. He was an amazing guy, and I think our biggest achievement was restarting the Grange, which then leads to the Lions Club thrift store, which is a big deal. So thank you very much, people.
There you go, Ed. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. You know, yeah, and if anybody's looking for a phone, I've got a phone over here. You know, when I asked Ed to come and talk, he was happy to do so, but he said, I can't guarantee I'm going to stay there to the very end. And so I got like a half dozen lines. They're on Ed watch right now. They're where is he? Where is he? Where is he? You know, he went to the bathroom. He's coming back. You know. But anyways, I'm very glad that you came to stay here at the very end, and I'm very glad to be here to see you receive that award. It's very, very well deserved. So this brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Please accept our heartfelt thank you for your time and for your participation in this event. We hope you got some things out of it. Thank you so much.